I made a video about how I use ChatGPT to determine when I'm going to retire. And in the video, I used my own numbers. But my numbers are due to a lifetime of lots of financial education and the luck of going to university in a country where I didn't have to rack up a bunch of student debt. So, in fairness, there were some comments saying it was unrealistic. So, today, I want to step outside of my shoes and into the shoes of the average American 26-year-old. Here's the reality. At 26, you're still early in your career. You probably have student loans, maybe you're just starting to earn a decent salary, and retirement feels like it's decades away. But what if you wanted to retire early? Not at 65, but maybe in your 50s or even 40s. To answer that, I'm going to look at two key things: the average salary for 26-year-olds and the average retirement savings that people actually have at this age. And then we'll run the numbers to see what early retirement would really take if you're starting from the average. Some of these stats are going to be a little bit shocking, but I think they'll also show you that financial independence isn't just for people making six figures in tech. It's about using what you've got and being strategic. So let's dig in. So where we're going to start is on ChatGPT. And this is a tool that anybody can use. It's free to access. So like I said, what we're going to do is pull in the average stats of a 26-year-old. So in order to do that, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, can you tell me what the average salary is for a 26-year-old in the United States and also how much money they have saved for retirement? I also said, can you please provide sources for this? Because ChatGPT just pulls in a bunch of stuff from the internet. I want to make sure that it's actually pulling in stuff that really exists. So I'm going to validate that the things that they suggest are real. This is giving me a bunch of different options. So let's use this NerdWallet one. I trust NerdWallet as a source, and we're going to use median instead of average because we're using median salary. So when you use average instead of median, you just get a lot of people who are at the very top where that's skewing the data because there's a bunch of people that just are like disproportionately really good at saving and have like $1 million saved up. So let's use median. So I'm going to go back through and pull those numbers that I want. Okay, so I just added this big query into ChatGPT. What I said is, let's use these two numbers. We're going to use the $57,356 a year as the median salary and $18,880 as the median retirement savings. And then I said, assume using these stats, this is all I have for retirement, and I'm 26 years old, and I want you to work with me to build out a savings plan based on median cost of living in America and continue to build up my savings for retirement and estimate when I'm going to retire. I'm going to say, also consider modest salary increases. Let's see what we get. So the first thing that ChatGPT is going to do is give us all the starting assumptions. So it's just going to repeat back to me what I put in. And then I also, with that modest salary growth, we're going to assume 3% per year. And the annual return on my retirement account is going to be 7% per year. And then we're going to explore different contribution rates. So how much of my paycheck I am saving, as well as cost of living. So they said the US median disposable income is around $48,000 annually, according to the Federal Reserve data. To keep things realistic, let's assume 60% of your gross salary becomes net after taxes, meaning net income starts at roughly $34,414 a year, which gives me $2,867 a month take home. So to model the savings plan, it's giving me what my monthly net income is after taxes and saying if I save 10% of my gross salary would be $5,736 a year. I am saving $478 a month. So now it's showing me this big chart and it's going by ages and it's assuming my salary is growing, but I'm saving the same amount as my salary grows. So even though I'm making 3% more per year, I'm always saving 10% of whatever I'm making that year. So I'm not just saving the same number every single year. The number I save also goes up year over year. So it starts at 26 with my salary and then assumes that I already have $18,880, like we said, and it's going to continue to grow and I'm going to continue to save money. It then shows me the formula. Not going to read it. I don't like math. And says if I continue to save 10% every single year until I turn 65, I will have $1.28 million at age 65. So this is assuming that I'm only saving 10% until that year that I retire, when I retire at age 65. It's then giving me scenario B, if I save 15% of my salary, which gives me 1.82 million by 65. And the last one, 20% of my salary, which is a very aggressive saving goal, I would have 2.36 million by age 65. All right, so this was obviously a huge query for ChatGPT. There's so much stuff going on in this, and it gives me these scenarios, but then it keeps going into when is it possible? So it's then telling me we're making a rough calculation based on something called the 4% rule. What is the 4% rule? How do you know what number you need when you retire? I don't know. So this is explaining to me that the 4% rule is a retirement planning guideline to estimate how much I can safely withdraw. So I want to make sure that I'm not taking out too much money year over year from my investments because then they will lose money and not gain that amount back. So this is from a really old study who found that a 4% withdrawal rate allowed retirees in all historical scenarios to make their money last at least 30 years. So that means from the day you retire, if you always only take 4% out of your investment accounts, you will make that money last at least 30 years despite any recessions, pandemics, whatever happens. So basically, if you want to make sure that your retirement fund is going to last you 30 years while you're spending $50,000 a year, which is what you were making approximately, it's slightly less than what you were making when you had a job, because remember, the salary that we're using here in this scenario is around $54,000. You'd need $1.25 million saved. But if you wanted to boost that and spend $75,000 a year, which is a lot of money because this person in this scenario, the average person, is making a salary of $73,000 by 35. So going up to 75,000 is probably pretty realistic, but a 35-year-old would have children, and somebody who's retiring theoretically would no longer have children that they need to support. But in order to be conservative, let's say that you want to make sure that you have $75,000 a year that you can spend in your retirement, because that's the average. So in order to have $75,000 a year that you can spend as a retired person, you need $1.875 million saved. So this is not the guaranteed outcome. So I learned a little bit about what the 4% rule is, decided, okay, I probably want $75,000 a year. There is so much math going on here, and this is just a huge answer. So I'm going to read the key takeaways. Saving 10% of my salary, starting at age 26, gives me enough to spend about $50,000 a year in retirement, and I could retire at 64. If I wanted to have a little bit more, where I could spend about $72,000 a year, I would need to save $1.875 million, and it could be at age 66 to 67. But then you can pull different levers when you decide things. You can adjust your contribution rates. You can try to retire earlier. You can include other things like the employer match, like it's saying. You also have to consider emergencies and your short-term goals. Maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe that $18,000 is going to go away. So there's a bunch of different things that you can change in this scenario. But we're going to keep going with average. So let's say that I want $75,000 a year in my retirement. Is there any way, knowing what the median salary is in America, that I can retire in my 50s? That's what I asked. And it's going to do all the math. So using the formulas that they said that if I only save 10% every single year, I won't hit my goal by even 65. If I save 15%, I would hit that goal around 60, but I could retire a little bit earlier if I so chose. If I saved 20%, then I would be able to retire between 56 and 58, given only making 3% more every single year that I'm working. So pretty much it told me that it's not really looking that possible. So it's going to talk to me about other options. I could save more aggressively early. I could add an employer match, or I can boost my investment returns. I can also have slightly more flexible spending, meaning spend less money in retirement. I don't want to spend less money. I don't have an employer match, and I don't want to assume the market is going to do better than 7% a year. I think it would be irresponsible of me to assume it's going to do more than 7% because that's the historical number. And betting on a hopeful potential outcome is not a good way to save for retirement. Really, my only option here is save more aggressively. But this says save more aggressively early. So let's dig into that. So I said, I think the only viable option in step 3 is to save more aggressively early. So what does that look like? What ChatGPT is saying is that front loading is a great way to go about that. So front loading means saving more when you're younger and taking your foot off the gas a little bit as you age. This is something that is really, really helpful because when you're young, you're making a good amount of money, but statistically speaking, you don't have children yet. So you have the opportunity to save more money because you're not paying for dinosaur toys. So this is saying if I save 20 to 30% of my income in my 20s and 30s, I can scale back and it will compound, which is great. So money that sits in the market for longer will make you more money. So all of the dollars that you save later into your retirement journey are less valuable than the dollars that you saved earlier on because they don't have time in the market to compound and make more money from your money. So if I, until age 35, save 25% of my money, which is a lot of money, and this is not possible for everyone, but if you have roommates, if you take public transport instead of the bus, you do all of those like don't buy lattes and avocado toast and then you can afford a house type of things, which don't really make a difference in the grand scheme of things, as in people tell you that the conventional wisdom to save money is to just cut back on your spending. And the reality is most people just need to make more money because the cost of living is very expensive. But the difference here between saving 25% and saving 15% can be done through those conventional rules. Things like not eating out as much, taking fewer vacations, making those choices when you're younger so that you can retire earlier is a great option for people. It's something that I do right now. I try not to eat out as much as I want to. I don't buy as many clothes as I want to. I travel a lot, but not as much as I want to because I am heavily investing my money right now. I'm aggressively saving. I'm saving significantly more than the standard amount that people recommend of 15% because I want to make sure that I front load my retirement savings so that later on when I have children, I don't have to worry so much about my retirement. So this scenario B of saving 25% until age 35 and then 15% after allows you to retire in your late 50s instead of 60. So the conventional wisdom of not being able to retire until you're 67 could change a lot if for the next 9 years I save a quarter of my income instead of 15%. The next scenario is saving 30%, which is a lot of money and probably not super possible for people. At today's salary, $57,000 gross, 15% would be $720 a month. 25% would be $1,190 a month. This is a lot of money. Saving $1,000 a month is so much money. That's pretty much half of what you get after your paycheck. Is it possible? I believe so. Does it mean that you're going to have to live a crappier life for the next 9 years than you really want to? Probably. But those are the choices that you have to make. Obviously, if you just continue working and following the conventional wisdom of retirement, you'll be able to retire no matter what you choose, as long as you keep saving that 10% amount. It will just be later. If you want to focus on your retirement savings, it's entirely possible to do it at the median salary and the median savings that exist right now in America. And ChatGPT is proving that with the numbers it's presenting. So it then goes in to explain why this works. And it says $10,000 saved at 26 grows to $115,000 by age 65. But that same 10K saved at 45 only grows to $38,000. So this is that front loading thing that I was talking about. So by loading up in the first decade, you can afford to coast later, relying on compounding interest instead of ultra high contributions. This is called Coast Fire. So FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early, is a movement about finances to make sure that you're being responsible with your money. Lots of people do it. FIRE is not super realistic anymore. It's definitely something that can still be done, but with the cost of living and what salaries are, it's really hard to do it unless you're in, a high paying job. But Coast Fire is something a lot of people are interested in now. Coast Fire, like it says, is front loading your investments and then getting to coast later because the market is going to take care of paying for your retirement for you. It then gives me the summary of sticking with 15%, I can retire around 60. Front loading to 25 until 35 years old, I can retire in my late 50s. And then that still gives me that increase of an extra $1,100 a month when I'm 35. So when I'm 35 years old and I've already bumped up all of my savings, I can Coast Fire, which means that $1,190 that I was then contributing to my retirement plan, I get to spend again. So it gives me the opportunity to spend more money on dinosaur toys for kids. And then if I push to 30% until I'm 35, I can retire in my mid 50s. So ChatGPT has ran all the numbers for me, has shown me all of these different possibilities, and has shown me that even on the median American salary with the median American amount of savings, it's still possible to retire a little bit early. Unfortunately, there's no magic way to make that happen unless you save more, and you're the person that's going to have to go do it. But it's definitely an option, and you could definitely pursue it. It just takes a little bit of time and probably some discussions with ChatGPT. This is a great tool for you to use. It does all the math for you and all the hard parts, and you just get to ask as many ridiculous questions as you want, and it makes it feel like you are more in control of your money and can make better decisions because you have more data available to you. So everyone's going to have to retire at some point in their life. If you are making close to the median American salary, it might feel like that day will never come for you, and you're going to have to rely on a pension or Social Security. I don't think that has to be the case. I think it's entirely possible for people on the median salary, as ChatGPT just told us, to retire at an age where they will still be able to get to enjoy their senior years of life. Thank you so much for watching.